Welcome to Brewsers, podcast about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. I'm your host, Rody John, and today we talk to the Hollywood horror Lexii Gomez. We talk all about her background in acting, the world of pro wrestling, and so much more. This is such a fun conversation, and Lexii is definitely someone to take a look out on the independent circuit. She is making her way up, and she is doing huge things. We'll get to her in a second, but first, make sure to sign up for our newsletter. It comes out twice a week. You get even more information about our guests. You get fun facts, and you get to find out what's happening with your favorite podcast, all about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. So without further ado, here is the Hollywood horror Lexii Gomez. I would like to welcome to the show the Hollywood horror Lexii Gomez. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So for those listening, kind of paint us a word picture. Where are you at? What's going on around you?
What is going on around me?
Yes.
In my life, my career?
Yeah.
I love this question. I have just been really getting into my new persona, my new character, really finding out who the Hollywood horror is. I'm getting super creative and trying to expand like how I look at wrestling in different ways. I've been training a lot, going to the gym a lot, and I'm really focused and really excited for the summer. And can't wait to see what, coming up.
I love that. Well, yeah, I was watching some of your older matches, and then, that compared to what's happening on Instagram is, like you said, you're entering a new chapter of what the Hollywood horror is. So for those that haven't seen you before, or maybe hearing about you for the first time, I guess kind of describe who the Hollywood horror is now, as opposed to when you first started and were trying to get your feet under you.
All right. I love that question. I guess I can say like I used to when I first started and I was new and just coming in, I really didn't know who I was as a wrestler or a person, and I didn't really know how to channel that much, although I knew that I loved to wrestle. Um, and over at least like the past year, I've really taken depth into who I am as a wrestler and how to bring in who I am as a person. And not necessarily saying I'm a crazy, I'm going to kill everybody type of person like my character does, but I take a lot of influence from something I love, and that's horror movies and movies in general. I really kind of fell into place with the whole Hollywood horror, with the idea of me creating my own production of horror films, me being in the ring and having my opponent be my victim, me bringing slasher movies to real life. And I feel like I'm more confident now in being able to explain this than I was from a few months ago, actually. Like I said, with like getting more into this, it's helped me be able to speak and just be creative in different ways than I wasn't a few years ago. It's a very dark, very ominous type of character that I feel like I can do a lot with, and it's it's great. Like so far I've really it sparked my fire for wrestling even more. And here I am now, and I just, it's just more and more things like, that is like flowing through my, body now that I'm really excited to share and bring, to life. And it's really exciting, and it's very, very exciting.
Oh, I love that. I mean, they always say the best gimmicks are whoever somebody is just turned up to 11. And if you already love the horror movies and the movie world in general, why would you not bring that into the world of wrestling? I mean, look what Bray Wyatt's done. Look at Abaddon. I mean, the list goes on and on as to like who the characteristics of maybe a movie character or a genre in general, and bringing that into pro wrestling. Where did you kind of get the idea to start melding them? And then I guess who are some horror inspirations that you have taken for your character?
Oh, I love this question. So, definitely a lot of inspiration is like it's so crazy. If I had $1 for every time I heard this, I get told all the time, "You remind me of the Bride of Chucky, you're Tiffany Valentine." As soon as I bleached my hair blonde.
Right.
Wasn't my intentions, but growing up, I loved that movie. I was a little girl that would be in my bed watching Scream and Bride of Chucky and, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, I loved that. I loved that growing up, and, it might have been a little weird, but I loved it. So whenever, I would get that a lot, and sometimes, like, people would try to use it, like for like promos, like as an insult, like, "Oh, we're gonna take the Bride of Chucky, blah blah blah," as an insult. And I'm like, no, it's a compliment, and I can see it. I like her attitude and how it's like, you know, I really took a big influence from that. So I would have to say definitely though, becoming the Hollywood Horror, with that name and with the whole the lights, camera, action, the star of the show, like that kind of atmosphere definitely came from a promotion that I worked for, Pro Wrestling Action. um, I debuted for them last year, and that's when I was still under the unbreakable Lexii Gomez, and I still didn't really know who I really was. Um, that company is like really strong on character and storytelling and having individual wrestlers, and I love that. I love that. It really sparked my interest in, okay, right, I don't really feel like I have a character. I feel like I'm just a wrestler who
Mm.
goes out here and does things. I don't really know who I am and how I can channel that into the ring and to tell the fans, what they're looking at, besides that I can wrestle. So I definitely give a lot to them. They really helped me get into my creative side. Really, like, each show that I do, I feel more connected to like my character and things that I can do and the future. So I definitely owe a lot of that to them, and the influences to all the movies that I watched growing up. And I just try to, put that in there, a little sprinkle of that, and an homage to horror movies, if you will. That's basically what I'm going for. So,
Oh, I love that so much. So let's go all the way back in time. What is your earliest memory of pro wrestling?
ooh, my earliest memory. Um, It would definitely be me being like a really small child and like standing in front of my TV and being like, "Do you smell what the Lexi's cooking?" Like, I loved The Rock as a kid. Like, I would do like the people's brow. I would stand there and I would make my mom watch me do it. And um, I feel like that was like my earliest memory. And I don't know. It was crazy because like I see this all the time. I watched I watched it as a kid, and I loved a lot of, like, the Hardy Boys. They were my favorites, Edge and Christian, Lita, all of them were my favorites. But I grew out of it. I did for a
Mm.
while. And I didn't really watch wrestling up until I was like a teenager again, because I kind of just started like, I liked performing, like singing and acting and doing things like that. And I kind of just like, fell off of it. So I always like, my earliest memories was definitely when I was younger. It wasn't, I feel like it was kind of short lived because I was so young and I have a really bad memory for being dropped on my head a lot. But I can always, like, my roots always goes back to like the Attitude Era, and like the early 2000s, and just seeing that and just being like, oh my God, I love this. And it's like, Monday night. And then after that, I watch like Naked Night and stuff.
No, I love it. So, how did the transition from obviously being the fan to let's give this a try? Maybe I can actually do this and
Oh, okay, cool. This
be
is a
there.
this is a fun story. This is something I can always remember. It was probably like 2016, 2017, and I was leaving Universal Orlando, whatever, the theme park, and I came across Impact taping
Hmm.
live free TV tapings, and it was like a sign. We were leaving. I was soaking wet. We just got off the water rides, and I passed it, and I was looking, and I looked at my family, and I was like, they do that here. Like, I didn't really know, like I said, like I wasn't really watching things. I didn't really think anything of that. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't really do like wrestling shows here. Like, it's free, let's go. So we go in there, and it's freezing in there in the building. I'm cold, but the show was already going because it was like it already had started. And I just remember it was like a scramble match for like the X division. And I was like glued. I was like, oh my God, this is like wrestling. This is what I watched on the TV. And then on the show, here comes like Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy, and my little kid self is screaming because I used to watch them, as a kid. So from then on, I went to like all of like the Impact tapings that would come into City Walk when they were doing it for a while. And I would be there. I would go there all the days. I would be on the guardrail with my little signs, my posters, and I would be like so happy to be there. And I just remember like being there and I looked and I was like, this is entertainment. Like they're entertaining us, and being in the crowd and being able to cheer and boo. It's such a different experience than watching it on your TV, which don't get me wrong. It's, I still love to watch it, but it's just a different change. And that kind of like inspired me. And I'm like, well, these people are in here entertaining us and they're, this crowd is loving it. Like, I feel like I could do something like that because like I said, like I've always loved performing and I love being in front of people. It's just something I've loved to do since I was like a child. And I was like, I'm not the most athletic person, but I feel like this is something that I could do. And I love it so much. I'm such a fan of it. Like I'm into it right now. I would love to be on that side. So then I told my mom, I think I was probably like 18 or like probably like 18 or 19 around that time. And I told her about it and she's like, you sure you want to do that? And I was like, yeah, I feel like I could. And she was super supportive. And so we found a school in Orlando and then I started training and fell in love with it and haven't looked back since. So I'm very grateful for that experience. And like I said, I don't think I'd ever forget those kind of memories.
That's amazing. I love that because I've had this conversation multiple times recently with people about, you know, what their earliest memory is, and then obviously when their first show was. And once you actually see it in person, it's a completely different animal.
Mhm.
Like I have so many friends, I've loved wrestling since I was a kid, so I've always been, kind of tagged with, oh, that's the guy who loves wrestling, and any gifts or anything, videos that come around, people will send them to me, and I'm like, oh yeah, this was this show, blah blah blah. But
Right.
I have so many friends now that I've been able to get them to their first wrestling show, and even their kids came with them and they loved it. Like they
Oh,
were
I love that.
over the moon about it. The kids wanted to be like, when's the next one? When can we come back? And it was like they just wanted more of it. And I was like, this is what it is. When you go to a live show, it is way different than anything
So
you will
different.
ever expect. Because it's people always use the F word, and I'm like, predetermined, first off. We don't use that F word
Predetermined.
around here.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you.
But
Thank you for that.
yeah. So, and then they hear the actual chops in person. They hear,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
punches, the
You see
kicks,
it
the
happening. You
slams.
see
Yes.
it. You're interacting with it. You're a part of that. Like it's crazy. It's so different. I love it.
Yeah. And then, I've been lucky enough to be to the past, or I've been to 15 WrestleManias now. 2020 kind of ruined our streak, but, it's fine. But and then I like to show people, just the pictures or even the video of like the magnitude that is WrestleMania, and like, up to, depending on how you, actually believe the numbers or not, up to 100,000 people in one spot at one time, like watching pro wrestling. Is they're like, holy shit, that's real.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, like that is absolutely nuts, having that many people
Wild.
in one place watch for pro wrestling of all things.
Yeah. It's wild.
Hmm.
I love it.
I love that was that your first show to actually be at live?
Yeah. It
Wow.
was. Yeah. My first time ever. I really I never really like think like, oh, I could go see them because like I said, like when I was growing up, I didn't really like pay that much attention to it. I fell off from it, so I it was like all new to me, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is how they do it. Like we're here, we're gonna watch this, and it was great. It was a great like accidental surprise. Like I'll never forget it.
So I read that one of the places you trained at was flatbacks. Where else would you train at?
I don't know. I never really actually. I never. No, I don't. I don't. I've never trained under flatbacks.
Interesting.
But I did get
Commentary,
to train with that
right.
WXW with Pops. Recently
Mm.
I've been able to go to the wrestling lab with Jay Lethal and David Mercury. They've been able to show me a lot of good stuff lately. I've been training with them. I get to learn some really good things from them actually. So yeah, that's where I got some.
Oh.
And then I had an old school in Orlando, but that's another 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 talk. We don't talk about
Okay.
that.
Yeah. So who are some of the veterans that you kind of, obviously you just mentioned Jay Lethal and some other people, but like when you're working these shows, who are kind of some of the veterans either in your area or some even bigger names that you have coming through that you kind of either lean on or are giving you some really good advice?
um, I wish I could say more than the few that I have because